What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Power Play with CJ. We're going to continue doing our hockey alternate history because, like I said, I don't want to talk about the lockout more than I have to. Someone asked me, you're living in the past. Well, you know what? Someone told me I was living in the past. I got to talk about something not pertaining to hockey. This is kind of fun, and I like to critically think about different situations that could have happened in the history of hockey. And this one is if Harry Sinden traded Ray Bourque to the Philadelphia Flyers instead of the Colorado Avalanche. Obviously, I remember the year they traded him, 2000, the trade deadline. They played Philly in a matinee game. They held the plane on the tarmac at Logan Airport in Boston to try to get the deal done. It fell apart. They ended up trading him a couple days later to Colorado. They lost to Dallas that year, then won the Cup the next year, and we all know that moment when Sakic handed him the Cup. It was one of the most beautiful moments in history of hockey, without sounding too cliche. But the big thing that held him up from going to Philly was they were hesitant to give up Simon Gagne, who was a young player. He was on the roster with Philly at that time. I think he was 20 years old, 19 or 20. He was 19, going on 20. And, he really, the player Gagne turned into. And, if it wasn't for the injuries, I think he'd be a 500-goal scorer personally. But, the Bruins wanted him, obviously, for how good he is, and, all that. But if he went to Philly, that was the year they blew the 3-1 series lead against the Devils. The Devils won the Cup that year against Dallas. Does Ray Bourque get you past the Devils? Absolutely. I think it's even close. They lost 3 games. Like I said, Philly had a 3-1 lead. Devils came back and won the next 3. 2-1 in Game 6, 2-1 in Game 7. Does Ray Bourque get you a goal in those? Yeah, absolutely. You might say, well, he's a little bit older back then. He was older, but he was still a second team All NHL defenseman in 2001. At I think 41 years old, so Bourque still had it in him to play at a high level, even at that age, just because his fitness level was so off the charts. Now, having said that, now playing devil's advocate, someone's going to say, oh, so they get past the Devils, it doesn't go to 7. Eric Lindros doesn't have a career-altering concussion. I won't say that because the way Lindros played the game. He developed a lot of bad habits growing up, playing midgets, playing juniors, weird because he was so big he could play with his head down and guys would bounce off him. We all know they had Scott Stevens laid the boom on him, and the rest was history. I mean, he came back, he took some lead seasons, but was never the same player, and that was actually his last game as a Flyer. People forget that. But I think that hit was going to come no matter what. Now, the hypothetical Stanley Cup Finals with Ray Bourque on the back end in a Philadelphia Flyers uniform against the Dallas Stars, I think they would have beaten Dallas. Brian Boucher was having an unbelievable rookie year that year. He had like 2 goals against average in the playoffs and a 191 in the regular season. Now, this was during the clutch and grab era, so we're going to take those numbers with a grain of salt, but those are pretty solid numbers nonetheless. Now, seeing Ray Bourque lift the Stanley Cup in Philly would have been weird, but I don't think it would have taken much away from what he accomplished in Colorado or what he accomplished as a Bruin. He's one of the elite players who ever played the game. And then on the Bruins end, had Gagne and Joe Thornton played together in the early 2000s, out of a pretty awesome 1-2 duo that might have won them some playoff series. Do I think they were going to win the Cup under the Mike Sullivan regime? No, I don't think so. The O'Connell, Sullivan, no. But still pretty cool to look at that way. But I think, Philly would have got a Cup out of it. Now, they would have lost Simon Gagne, but all due respect, you didn't win a Cup with Gagne, so if you win one without it, was bad. It's something to look at. But, I'm going to keep this little alternate history series going. I got a few more planned for the next couple of days. That's all I got in this episode of the Power Play with CJ. If Ray Bourque was traded to the Philadelphia Flyers instead of the Colorado Avalanche, alternate history. Stay tuned for more episodes throughout the lockout and beyond. Later, guys.